distinguished senators of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. The fifth order of the day is a motion standing in the name of distinguished Senator Ume Victor and 31 others on the urgent need to upgrade the Eastern Rail Line traversing Port Harcourt, Enugu, Maiduguri from narrow gauge rail to standard gauge rail. Mr. President, you may wish to invite distinguished Senator Ume Victor to move the motion.
Distinguished Senator Ume.
Thank you, Mr. President. My name is Senator Victor Ume, OFR. I represent Anambra Central Senatorial District. Mr. President, this motion is on the urgent need to upgrade the Eastern Rail Line, traversing Port Harcourt through Enugu, Makurdi through Maiduguri, from narrow gauge rail to standard gauge rail. This motion is co-sponsored by actually 34 senators. 31 are listed here. There were 3 omissions. Senator Kakashi Lawan from Borno Central, Senator Yaro Binos Davida, Adamawa South, and Senator Adeniba Francis Fadahunsi, Osun East. Mr. President, may I proceed to present the motion, which has been outstanding for about 3 weeks now. The Senate notes that the Eastern Rail Line, which serves 4 geopolitical zones of South-South, Southeast, North-Central, and Northeast, runs from Port Harcourt through Enugu, Makurdi, Jos, Bauchi, and Maiduguri, is the longest and one of the oldest rail lines in Nigeria. The Senate also knows that a functional railway system in Nigeria will help to reduce vehicular traffic on our roads and save them from constant dilapidation. The Senate further notes that the Eastern Rail Line is the only direct link from Maiduguri to Port Harcourt deep sea port for export processing activities from that flank. Aware that the federal government resolved in 2017 to modernize and standardize the Nigerian railway system by building standard gauge rail lines and the acquisition of modern coaches, both for passenger movement and goods across the country. The Senate is also aware that in 2017, the federal government borrowed a loan sum of $6.8 billion, United States dollars, for standardization and modernization of the Nigerian Railways network. Further aware that in furtherance of this objective, the federal government embarked on modernization of the following rail lines: Abuja to Kaduna, Ajokuta to Itakpe to Warri, Lagos to Ibadan, Kaduna to Kano, and Kano to Maradi in Niger Republic. The Senate observes that modernization and standardization of almost all the above mentioned rail lines have been completed or nearing completion and operational with new coaches. Port Harcourt to Maiduguri line remains the only narrow gauge rail line in Nigeria. The Senate further observes that in April 2022, the federal government awarded a failed contract sum of $3.2 billion for rehabilitation and reconstruction of a narrow gauge rail line instead of standard gauge rail line from Port Harcourt to Maiduguri, which has been vandalized, abandoned, and overgrown with weeds and trees. Pained that not only that the project failed, but the Chinese contractors partnering with the federal government on the project, who were expected to provide 85% of the expected funding program, abandoned the project without injecting any funds. concerned that the federal government should, as a matter of necessity, national interest, and the resultant anxiety of excluding the 4 geopolitical zones which the Eastern Rail Lines covers, maintain a common developmental program for the country by taking immediate steps to build standard gauge rail line from Port Harcourt to Maiduguri. Worried that the federal government is missing a huge amount of revenue by the exclusion of the Eastern Rail Line in the ongoing railway standardization and modernization program, and convinced that the inclusion of the Eastern Rail Line in the current modernization and standardization program will enhance sustainable socio-economic relationships across the country and also promote national integration and ultimately boost the economy and give a sense of belonging to all. The Senate accordingly resolves to 1. Call on the federal government to upgrade the Eastern Rail Line running from Port Harcourt to Maiduguri from narrow gauge rail to standard gauge rail. 2. Call on the federal government to suspend the purported planned rehabilitation of the outdated narrow gauge rail from Port Harcourt to Maiduguri. 3. Call on the federal government to instead make arrangements for the proper funding of the construction of standard gauge rail in the Eastern Rail Line and the acquisition of modern coaches to wit. And 3. Urge the Committee on Land Transport to ensure that all the 4 geopolitical zones within the Eastern Rail Line corridor benefit from the ongoing railway standardization and modernization program of the federal government. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I urge you to support this motion so that Nigeria will maintain a uniform policy of having railway lines that are made and run with standard gauge rail. This is the only one outstanding out of the old rail lines built by the colonial administrations in Nigeria. I so move. Thank you, Mr. President and distinguished colleagues.
I'm Senyin Naya Baribe, and I represent Abia South. Mr. President, there's something to be very glad about by me being an indigene of this Senate. What I mean, Mr. President, is I've been here for some time, and this particular motion and the issues surrounding it is not just new. It was here when you were minority leader of the Senate. And
Please, what did you say? That the Senate President was out?
There was a one-time minority leader of the Senate. So, Mr. President, this has been here since the 8th Senate. And one of the biggest problems that we have is that no transport minister has been able to give a reason why in modernization of rail lines built by the colonial masters in Nigeria, only the Eastern Rail Line has been ignored and sentenced to oblivion like we have. And when I confronted the former minister, Mr. Rotimi Amechi, on why, he couldn't answer. All he said was, well, we are modernizing by just putting new rails. And I said, if it is a narrow gauge, how do you modernize a narrow gauge by bringing another narrow gauge? And there was absolutely no, I would say, rational explanation for it. So I second this motion with all amount of happiness by the fact that we now have another government that can take a look again, because it does not make sense. Because our people say that when you want to share things, equity is the best way to do. You cannot have a narrow gauge in the eastern part, a standard gauge in the western part, and even go back to go ahead to say you're building new rail lines that is going to transverse from Lagos to Calabar, that will be standard gauge, which will, of course, cross this particular one, which means that you cannot move coaches from one point to the other. So, Mr. President, I fully support this motion, and I urge my colleagues to make sure that all the 4 geopolitical zones on the Eastern Rail network are fully covered by a standard gauge. I know that they said that they signed a contract, but the contract is not being implemented as due. And there is now time for us to go back to the drawing board, because I come from Aba, Mr. President, and there is no rail line now. They removed the old ones and have not replaced anyone. So that gives us an opportunity. There's a right of way now. They don't need to pay for anything. The old right of way is there. All they now need to do is to just do further surveys and see how we can now put in something better for our people. I so submit.
Well, I think the Nigerian public will be to explain the difference between the narrow gauge and the standard gauge, so that they will understand. I think that's it. So whoever is going to speak next should be somebody who is well versed in it. So I recognize Senator Dengi, since he's still insisting that he knows the technicalities.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. President, for allowing this particular motion to come through. Leaders, Mr. President, write history. And this is, in my opinion, a very golden opportunity that the 10th Senate under your leadership is bringing this motion to bear. The one particular technical difference between the narrow gauge and the standard gauge. Narrow gauge is extinct. It's extinct. It's no longer in vogue. No country, Mr. Chairman, construct the narrow gauge in the entire world. So it is the standard gauge that's in place. Even the standard gauge is getting moribund because there are other superior gauges that are coming into being. The speed gauge, sir. This particular gauge on the narrow gauge will afford you to travel from Port Harcourt to Gombe to Maiduguri for 48 to 47 hours. On the standard gauge, it will reduce to almost 12 to 13 hours. On the speed gauge, it will only take 2 hours. Therefore, one of the problems associated with us as a country is that this particular line is the longest and almost the oldest. But it seems there is no political will. Probably they are looking at the money. And you could see other areas have been addressed with the standard gauge. And therefore, when the member of the motion approached some of us, not because I come from the Northeast, and not because it's the issue of the Northeast, the South, or the North Central. No, no. It is an issue of Nigeria as a whole. When we come together as one entity, one nation, one destiny. So, Mr. President, this is the issue. I beg you to look at this motion and take it through. Sir, one of the things that people do unconsciously or unconsciously, consciously or unconsciously, that some of these things already the entire country is aware of what we are doing, because this motion has been in place for the last almost 15 years ago, and people are avoiding it. And even the senators will know that people will not pay attention. So by the time this motion is read, the community along this has been noted by the are feeling like they're sidelined. They're second-class citizens of Nigeria. And Mr. President, tell them, this Senate says you are not second-class. You are Nigerians and we're treating you like Nigerians. Sir, this is the only line that transverses 4 geopolitical zones. And as far as 37 years ago, I was using this particular line from my place, Bauchi, to Port Harcourt, even when I was in secondary school. to visit an uncle who was in the army in Port Harcourt. Today, sir, nothing like that happens. The roads are dilapidated. And the worst roads in the entire country happens across this road, except the road between Akwa Ibom and Kalba that I actually transversed in the course of this assignment. We can't continue, sir, to have roads, some good roads in some other areas, and some terrible, deplorable roads in others. We must be equitable. We must justify why we're here. And I'm sure, Mr. President, with our leadership, Nigerians will know that we are making a difference, especially in bringing equity and fairness to bear. Thank you very much.
So I was going to interview in Nigerian military school in the early 70s when most of our colleagues were not yet born. But for those who were born, you understand that it was a thing of delight to enter from Port Harcourt. Sometimes it would stop at Aba, we would join at Aba, and from there we knew all the villages and roads and all that. It was they had express also. Express, huh? Yes, you had local and express, but even the express used to stop at Aba to pick passengers who were going to Kafanchan. From Kafanchan going all the way down to Medugri. It was a beautiful thing. But now that rails have been modernized, we don't want to know what happened in the past. And we don't want to know what the past ministers thought. But what is worth doing is worth doing well. I think it's important that the Senate takes a position and conveys that position to the government of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu that would like that rail line to be modernized and by true standard gauge and not this narrow gauge. And we can complete them in segments if we don't have enough funds. We can do so in segments, but to take us back to 1942 when that thing was constructed by the colonial masters or whatever is not the best. So is there anybody that is opposed to this? We go to the prayers. Prayer 1, call on the federal government to upgrade the Eastern Rail Line traversing Port Harcourt and many cities all the way to Medugri from the proposed narrow gauge to standard gauge rail. Those in support of prayer 1 say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Prayer 2, call on the federal government to suspend the purported planned rehabilitation of the outdated and moribund narrow gauge rail from Port Harcourt to Medugri. Those in support of prayer 2 say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Prayer 3, call on the federal government to instead make arrangements for the proper funding of the construction of standard gauge rail in the Eastern Rail Line and the acquisition of modern coaches to which and further urge the Committee on Land Transport to ensure that all the 4 geopolitical zones within the Eastern Rail Line corridor benefit from the ongoing rail constructions through standardization and modernization programs of the federal government. Those in support of prayers 3 and 4 say aye.
I represent Bauchi Central, Bauchi Central. Mr. President, we are living in very, very difficult times. We are living in very hard times, and it is important to believe every one of us is threatened security-wise. Mr. President, gone are those days when we hear security challenges from in the northeast, in the north central states of Niger and Benue, in the northern western states of Zamfara and Sokoto. Today, Mr. President, as we speak, the only area that is secure in Nigeria that go out and sleep with their eyes closed is probably the villa. Every part of this country, people are apprehensive. Just 2 days ago, sir, just 2 days ago, in Kubwa, the in-law of Jeribe was kidnapped. Payment paid. After the payment, they killed the man. Just 2 days ago, Senator Jeribe's in-law. And that has been the story, sir, of everywhere in this country. And this is about the 9th attempted motion on security only in the last 4 months. Sir, we can't continue to keep on rendering motions one after the other. Eben Yar'Adua himself, this is about his 3rd motion on the issue of security. And that's why we created a committee of compliance. What has happened to the resolutions of the National Assembly? But knowing the kind of terrain we have, and for one, I'm not accusing the present administration of any dereliction. They have inherited a very bad liabilities, as of course covered by everyone that knows what is doing. Sir, 3 months ago, under your leadership, we sat here and screened the service chiefs, and we extracted commitment from them. Okay, sir.
Yes, point of order.
Mr. President, very distinguished senators, I stand pursuant to Order 8/3 to move that we do extend time to enable us see beyond 2 p.m. to finish all we have on the order paper for the day. I so move, Mr. President.
Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I second the motion that we sit beyond 2 p.m. to finish all the items on the order paper. I so second.
Distinguished extension of time and move and seconded.
I said 3.5 months ago, sir, we, under your leadership here, screened the service chiefs. Amongst other things that we have agreed with them, we have extracted commitment that from time to time, we need to invite them where there are issues. Sir, there is no better time now than now to recall these service chiefs together with the Inspector General of Police. Sir, as I speak to you, there is no constituency, one constituency, one senatorial constituency or federal constituencies that have no issues that has to do with security. And like I said, now this is the 9th attempt to deal with these security issues. What do we need to do going further, sir? It is, in my opinion, imbibe the security chiefs and the Inspector General of Police and the National Security Advisor before the Senate at a closed session and bring out all the motions by our boards and proceedings and inform them of the specifics like being enumerated by Senator Yar'Adua and many other of our colleagues. Sir, unless we try to do something different and tell them and ask them questions, what is their problem? This is what is happening in the nation. Why are we not getting improvement? Why are we? Is it about funding? Is it about personnel? Is it about logistics? What is it? What is the problem? Sir, if you go around this city, by 12 o'clock at night, run down the city you will never see one policeman. After 12, one policeman. Everybody goes home by 12. Everybody. And you know we're politicians. So we do our things usually at night. And you go there. And you know you are on your own. You know you are on your own. That is within the metropolis here. But you cannot even venture to go to Kubwa or Gorimpa by 10 o'clock. You call Uber, they will tell you they are not going there. Sir, we can't continue like this. So my suggestion is that in our prayer, as good as this motion is, we need to do some other things differently. When the prayer time for prayers come, I want to make an amendment to this thing. But it is a very, very disturbing phenomenon. And Nigerians are looking at us. They can't see the president, they can't see the governors, they see us. We are everything to them. So I think it is important that some of these informations are here, but it is also important, sir, the committee of compliance that we have created to be given the wherewithal, sir, to be able to follow up these motions. We can't make motion and then just keep them. And when tomorrow comes, there is no synergy between what we pass and what we are going to do. So the committee of compliance should be able to be empowered to follow all this up to the villa, up to the Inspector General of Police, National Security Advisor, service chiefs. So that by the time we have some of this situation, we just call him, what have you done this far? And then we'll get these answers. Thank you very much, sir. The Inspector General of Police and the DG Civil Defense for a closed-door interactive session with the Senate on matters of security.
Any seconder? Yes, distinguished Senator Zam.
Yes.
Mr. Senate President, distinguished colleagues, I am Senator Dr. Titus Zam. I rise to second the additional prayer as suggested by Senator Ningi, and I also have an additional one to add to his addition. But in the interim, I will only I will only second his proposal for additional prayer, and I crave your indulgence also.
The colleagues, the motion has been moved that we invite the security chiefs, Inspector General of Police, the Army chiefs, Defense chiefs, the Director General of SSS, the Civil Defense chief, and other gun-wielding security agencies, their heads and service chiefs, to a closed-door session with the Nigerian Senate to discuss holistically the issue of securing the nation, protecting lives and properties as soon as possible. Those who are in support of this prayer say aye. Those who are against it say nay. The ayes have it. I believe strongly this second prayer is all encompassing. Security issues are actually closed door issues. So once the security chiefs are invited and they come before us, all the other issues, we will table them and we will ask necessary questions. So it's not by prayer that you will invite, that you will solve the problem. It's by having one-on-one interaction with them. And then from there we can find out what they are actually doing to secure lives and properties, because it's our responsibility as representatives of the people to do so. So thank you for all your contributions. Additional prayer.
My name is Senator Abdul Ningi, and I represent Bauchi Central of Bauchi State. Mr. President, let me move to second the motion heavily canvassed by Senator Kawu Sumaila. At the same time, permit me to also say one or two things about this very important motion. Mr. President, this is a motion that should be devoid of any partisan politics or any regional divide.
course, during the Buhari era, the entire northern borders were actually closed, ostensibly for economic benefit. Now, having gone through 6 years of the closure of border, what befalls all of us is the tragic economic downturn of Nigeria and Niger as a matter of fact. So this is save our soul matter. Save the souls of Nigerians, save the souls of Nigerians. Of course, the recent closure of border is all known to distinguished colleagues, but the repercussion of the closure of border is so pronounced, is so profound, that when you visit those states bordering the Niger community, you see the effect of this border closure, you see the effect of the economic devastation, and that is coupled with the fact that those same communities, those same states are also invaded by a kind of civil unrest in terms of criminality by the bandits. So it is a double tragedy that the upper part of northern Nigeria is being affected. And when you look at Kano, as the most vital economic nerve center of northern Nigeria, you could see the effect. And when you take Kano as an example, it does trade almost with 36 states of Nigeria. And therefore, the devastation goes round, particularly from my state. The neighboring state of Bauchi, Jigawa, Kaduna, the price of items have quadrupled. And consequently, because of the foreign exchange and the issue of the value of the naira, this has added terrible effect to an average Nigerian, particularly from the northern part of this country. So this issue of border opening is simply to call the attention of government to the effect. And looking at the constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, which says the sole purpose for government is protection of lives and property. The protection of lives and property has a question mark. So it is important to now create a new way for which we want to live. We want to survive. We want to see tomorrow. We want to see to the enthronement of good governance. And we want to make sure our tomorrow is better than our today. But what is happening right now, there is helplessness, hopelessness of the entire economic prosperity of the Northerners, and in fact, generally of our Nigerians. So,
human and natural disaster, this Senate has never wait for any other day, but to reflect on what happened to the communities and commensurate with them. However, it is important for us to also know that flood has become a global phenomenon. It is global in nature. Some of it is human, some of it is man-made. But our problem in this country, Mr. President, is that where it is man-made, people are hardly called to account for their action or inaction. Every time there is flood in one community or the other, there is death and destruction of life and property. It becomes business as usual immediately after it. And because this House dedicates large sums of taxpayers' money in environment, in ecology, and the state government also replicate that. So it is important when there are some of these things that officiating officials that are in that agency should be called to account, should be questioned, and where there are infractions, people should be sanctioned. It is not normal to keep on repeating ourselves without seeing any positive result. I believe this is a very straightforward motion. It's a human motion, and the Senate should come and back it with all its force. I so submit.
Thank you. Ninja said it's a very straightforward motion, direct to the point. But let me give the opportunity for Senator Benga Daniel, because his area is also affected by the flood, to say his contribution.
My voice to this very robust debate, but as a matter of fact, the location of the university for me doesn't even matter, as long as it is university and education is the natural thing to do. And what is important is that the next big challenge to our common humanity is, of course, the environment. The climate change, we have seen what the environment, if not scientifically controlled, could do. We have seen devastation in Libya. We have seen it in Morocco. We have seen it in Kenya, in Turkey. We have seen it just 2 days ago in Afghanistan. So when you have a university that will really concentrate on the issue of environment, I think it is something that we must all encourage. Finally, sir, I do not want a university that is technology and environmental sciences based to be now diluted with other disciplines. That the university that was set up for this purpose will now, this particular discipline will now take a second importance. So it has to be this, because other universities have covered most of these areas. But once the university is controlled, is actually situated for this purpose, let the Senate emphasize and insist that the university must be for technology and environmental science, and from time to time, relevant committees must be able to oversight them. It is not just enough for us to pass a law. We must make it imperative that once a law is passed and the university is established, it is incumbent upon all of us, particularly relevant committees, making sure that this university actually is on technology and environmental sciences. That is my point.
Thank you very much. Senator Plang.
And I represent Bauchi Central, Bauchi State. Mr. President, let me, from the onset, welcome this supplementary budget in the first place. I believe the budget targets some very emergency areas, and I think it boils down to members of the National Assembly in looking at this budget to be able to capture the minimal requirements of Nigerians. Mr. President, in the letter that you read from the President, one thing that delights me is that you said the security agencies said this is their minimal requirement. The nation is held hostage by bandits all across the country, and therefore the security agencies must be able to follow through to the expectation of Nigerians and to the expectation of the President. I think it is just not, shouldn't be business as usual. These monies, when appropriated, the various committees of the National Assembly must be able to report back to the Senate as to the performances of this budget. And then the implementation. The President of the Senate must also have to follow through. While this budget is passed, let's begin to see difference. Let's feel the difference. Lastly, sir, the issue of the scholarship. Let this scholarship reflect the interest of the 36 states and the federal capital. Let it be seen practically that each state has a percentage that it is captured in the student budget. And lastly, the labor matter. The labor matter has to be nipped on the bud. The service-wide board will be able to accommodate the minimum requirement for the labor. I think this is a budget that we can simply sit down